Hi again. Welcome to a new video tutorial. In this tutorial, we will learn how to modeling and texturing a new character, a little more difficult than the snow golem of the previous video tutorials. This is the Ender Dragon, one of the principal enemies in Minecraft. You can see that it has much more polygons than the snow golem, and it's more difficult to model, texturize and animate. Let's start. In Blender, you have a cube by default, with a length in its edges of 2 units. You can see the length of the edges by pressing Tab, for edit mode, and then, doing click here, in this little plus icon. Here, you can activate the edge length display. We can see that each edge has 2 units of length. You can see it just in edit mode. We can use this cube of 2 units for the head of the Ender Dragon. Now, we will do the mouth of the Ender Dragon. We can duplicate this cube, using Shift-D. We can move this second cube in the Y-axis, but if we hold down Control key, we can move it 1 by 1 units. Now we want a height of 0.5 units in the mouth, and how we have a height of 2 units, we must scale it 0.25 units. So, we will press SZ key, and then we type 0.25 and press Enter key. But if we see it in edit mode, the height of the edge has 2 units. How's that? That's because we have scaled in object mode. We must scale it in edit mode, so the length value can change. That is a strange thing of Blender. We will do it again, but in edit mode. In edit mode, you can see how change the length value when we scale it. Now we need a length of 1.5 in the x-axis, so we press SX key, and we type 0.75. Cool! Now we can duplicate it, and we will have the lower jaw. In the Snow Golem video tutorials, we did first all the modeling, and when we finished it, we started with the texturing. But really, you can modeling and texturing at the same time, and you will save time with it. Let's see how can we go faster combining modeling and texturing. Let's do the nose of the Ender Dragon. Press Shift-A key, to add a new cube into the scene. We move it in Y-axis, and we press Tab key, for edit mode. Click on edge length if you want the length displayed. If we want a length of 0.5 in the Y-axis, we press SY key, and type 0.25. Press SZ key, and type 0.125, to scale the Z-axis. We do the same in the X-axis. But look at this. We can duplicate this nose, and we move it in the X-axis 0.4 units. And we move the other nose in the X-axis minus 0.4. We select both noses, and move them in the Y-axis. As we have duplicated the nose, we have 2 cubes exactly with the same size, the same lengths. But now, we have to texturize one of them, and then the other one. 2 objects may not take a lot of time texturing them, but when we will model the neck, or even worse, all the tail, we would have to texturize 1 cube, and then, the next one, and then, the next one, and so on. Let's texturing the head of the dragon. We open a second window by dragging the little icon in the corner. Then, we change to UV Image Editor. The image file we will use for texturing is the same texture used in Minecraft. we see that the texture is more complicated than the one we used for the snow golem. You have to find out where is located any element of the body. To open the texture file, do click on Image, and then, Open Image. We have to look for the file. Here it is. We will start to texturize the face. We are going to cut this one first. In Edit mode, select the edges to cut. This edge is this one here. And the plane of the bottom is this one. Ctrl E, and mark seam. Select all faces with A key, and U key for unwrapping. Drag it with G key, and scale it with S key. Select this separated plane, and move it here. OK, let's see it in texture view. If you can see well the texture, or it is very dark, remember that there is a point light. If you move the point light, now you can see better some faces. Look! When we bring the light to the dragon, it looks like he's waking up. Quick! Remove the point light, so we can see the model totally textured, with shadows. I think the head is not centered. Press GX key, to move it to the left. Now we will texturize the mouth. I don't know what piece is the upper mouth or the lower mouth, but both are almost the same. Let's think. This part is the upper part, because it has two marks for the nose. This rectangle is this one. And these sides must be these ones. This rectangle is the bottom side. Let's try it. This edge is this one. This edge is this one. This edge is this one. With Z key, we can see it better. We select this edge and the four edges in the bottom. Now, we mark seams, and unwrapping. The unwrapping is upside down, so we rotate it 180 degrees. Move it and scale it. We select this separated rectangle and then, we rotate it 90 degrees and we move it over the mouth. We change to texture view. We cannot see the lower part because the lower jaw is bothering us. We can move the lower to another layer, by pressing M key, and then, by selecting the second layer, for example. Now, it is like if we would have moved that cube to another room, where it cannot bother us. We see that the mouth doesn't fit very well. Let's move the texture a little bit. We can also scale it a little. Better. Remember, you can select more than one vertex by holding down Shift key. But another way to select various vertices is by pressing B for box, and you can create a box selection. All vertices inside the box will be selected. GY key to move them up. Press B key and select all these vertices. GX key to move them to the left. Alright. Let's go with the nose. We will see why is important to texturing the character before finishing all the modeling. Press Tab for edit mode. Here it is, the texture for the nose. Select edge with Control Tab. This vertical edge is this one. This long edge is this one. This short edge is this one. This long edge is this one. And finally these edges. Mark seams and unwrapping. These ones are okay, but these other ones are rotated 45 degrees. We select all of them, and rotate them 45 degrees. I think that this group goes here. We change to texture view. Cool! This little nose is here, in the correct position. Let's try to adjust the texture perfectly. Hey! Look at that! Do you see these strange edges? Later we will see it better, but first let's finish the texturing of the nose. This little square must go here. And the rectangles go here. I'm not sure really where this rectangle goes exactly, but anyway, there's not a lot of difference, because all the texture is almost the same. Maybe I have put the rectangles in different positions, but it's almost impossible to see the error. So, don't worry too much with it. Take a look at that. If you take a look at this edge, you can see like it's a little transparent. Here, we have a solid black part, but, close to edges, it is transparent. In this edge, we can see transparency too. But if you select the face, you can see that the rectangle is perfectly inside of the texture. It is not touching the transparent area. If we don't want these transparent edges, we have to move them away from the transparent proximity. You can see how the transparency in the edge disappears. You can see that these faces are very close to the transparent area. Let's move them away. Finally, these ones. Looks better. The whole of the nose looks like blurry, as is the case of the eyes, but there's a problem of my computer. Don't worry about that. Well, we have given texture to the left nose. It was not so difficult, but it took some of our precious time. And now, we have to texturize the right nose in the same way. Let's do it. Select the edges to mark seam. Ctrl-E and mark seam, select all and U-key for unwrap. Ups. Here we have a strange thing. That means that there is a vertex sharing 3 uncutted edges. So, 3 faces are staying together. We have to cut one of these 3 edges. Let's cut this one. We select that edge, and Ctrl-E for mark seam. I have to select all again, and then, U-key for unwrap from scratch. This piece is rotated 45 degrees, so we have to rotate it. We move up this rectangle, and select this one with B key. G key for move it, and S for scale it. We have to change the texture view, to see where goes the whole of the nose. Here it is. It's in the opposite side. We have to turn it to the other side. We can do that by scaling it in the X-axis. If you press S key, and then the X key, and you move the mouse, when you are approaching to the center of the object, it will be scaled to 0, so, if you move it to the opposite side, exactly -1 units, we will get the same object but in the opposite side. Type -1. Now we have put the whole of the nose in the right side. Let's move some edges, to remove the transparent zones. We can scale it a little. Okay. The nose looks great. Don't forget the other faces. we have finished the right nose. We did first the left one, and then the right one. But imagine that we first do the entire modeling of the Ender Dragon, and then we have to texturing all the elements, one by one. That would be crazy. It is always easier to model an element, and then texturize it, because if you duplicate it with Shift-D key, it won't just get the same identical size, but it will have the same texture, because you are also duplicating the same arcs, seams, and the same location in the UV map. We could have done the right nose by duplicating the left one, and then by scaling it in the x-axis to get the opposite side. If you scale it -1 in the x-axis, the whole of the nose will be located in the right side. We can remove this duplicated nose. But we can duplicate the upper mouth. The lower mouth has the same texture. Press Shift-D key and Escape key to drop it. Move it down in the Z-axis. Now, we can rotate it 180 degrees, like this. Or we can scale it -1 units in the Z-axis, so we will get the mouth turned upside down. Finally, we move it up in the Z-axis, to the correct position. Cool! We got it! Now, we can create the 5 cubes of the neck, with their 5 vertebrae. We will do just a cube with its corresponding vertebra, and then we will duplicate that 5 times. With Shift-A key, we add a new cube into the scene. The cube has a size of 2 units, but we need the cube with a size of 1.25 units, so we will scale it 0.625 units. Move it in the Y-axis. Here we have the texture for the cube of the neck. This is the upper side of the neck, because it has a mark for the vertebra. Let's texturing the cube of the neck. Select edges, with Ctrl-Tab key. Now, we select the edges to mark seam. Mark seam, and unwrap. We have to rotate it 90 degrees. We select this cube, and we move it to the right location. The square is attached, so we can select just the plane in the 3D view, and we will be able to move it there. It is almost good, but the upper side needs some adjustment. Cool. The first cube of the neck has been modeled and textured. Now, we will move to the first vertebra. Press Shift-A key, and add a new cube. If we want a length of 0.75 in the y-axis, we have to scale it 0.375 units. We need a length in the x-axis of 0.5, so, we will scale it 0.25. In the z-axis, the same. We can texturize the vertebra now. Here we have the texture for the vertebras. These ones are the same, but one is for the neck, and the other one is for the tail. We select edges, and we will mark seams. Ctrl-E, mark seam, select all, U key and unwrap. These faces are rotated. Let's rotate it 45 degrees. G key for move, S key for scale. Change to texture view. We can see some of transparency in an edge. If we select this face, we can see that one edge is very close to the transparent zone. Let's move these vertices down, with G and Y key. One edge of this face is too close to the transparent zone too. Let's move them to the left. This face looks like rotated. Let's rotate it in the UV editor. R key for rotating, and type 180 and press enter. We adjust it a little more. Great! We have our first vertebra textured. Move it down, in the Z-axis. We are going to do the next cubes of the neck and the vertebras. If we duplicate a cube, then, we have to duplicate separately the vertebra. But we can create a group with both elements, and then we just need to duplicate the group, not two separate elements each time. Let's see how can do that. Select one of the elements, and by holding down the Shift key, select the other element, and then, press Ctrl-J key, to join both elements, creating just one element. Now it works like just a single element. We can duplicate this element, and we move it in the y-axis. But we can move it in a random position. If we duplicate again the element, and we move it again in the y-axis, maybe this second element is more separated than the first one. How can we create a file of elements, all separated the same distance between them? One way to do that, using functions that we have already seen before, may be by duplicating and moving them a fixed value. Shift-D key, GY key, and type 1.3 for example. Press Enter. Again Shift-D key, GY key, type 1.3, and press Enter. And so on. We have done all the neck of the Ender Dragon. Perfect. But it has been a slow method by duplicating the cubes one by one. When we will do the tail, we will have to duplicate a cube 12 times. Luckily, there is a very easy and fast method that we will be able to use. Later we will see that. But first, let's do the ears. The ears are exactly the same object than the vertebrae. We can duplicate one of the vertebrae, but when we select the vertebra, we are taking all the element, with the black cube too. Change to Edit mode, and select Faces. We select one of the faces, and with Ctrl+ key, the selection grows to the closest faces. Press Ctrl+ key again, until all faces of the vertebra have been selected. Now we can duplicate the selection with Shift-D key. But if we change to Object mode, we cannot find the duplicated vertebra, because it forms part of the joined element. If we change to Edit mode, we can see the duplicated vertebra, and we can move it, but it belongs to the principal object. If we wish to separate out the selection from the neck cube, we have to press P key, and we choose Separate Selection. Now, the new vertebra is a single object, separated from the first cube. We have seen how to join two separated objects with Ctrl-J key, and how to separate two objects from a single object with P key. If we take a look at the new vertebra, it has the center in the original location. We would have to move the object using this separated axis. It's really not a big problem, but if you want the center point located in the center of the object, we can do this combination, Ctrl, Shift, Alt, and C key. That displays a set origin options, and we choose Origin to Geometry. That will move the origin center point to the center of the geometry. Now we have the center point in the usual location, as always. We can duplicate this ear, as we usually do, with Shift-D key, but I will teach you a new tool, the mirror modifier. This wrench icon displays the modifiers list. Do click in Add Modifier, and select Mirror. Now, a duplicated mirrored object has been created in the same location of the original one. The mirror plane will be located in the x-axis. But if you move the object in object mode, you cannot see the mirror effect, because the duplicated object follows the original one. If we change to Edit mode, and we move the object in the x-axis, the duplicated mirrored object will move in the opposite direction. This is a cool way to duplicate a mirrored object, and it is very useful to create eyes in 3D characters. We move the ear in Edit mode, in the right position. We can move it up a little, in Object mode. But why? Because if I move it in the Z-axis, or in the Y-axis, it doesn't matter if you're in Edit mode or Object mode, because the mirror axis is the X-axis. we have finished the ears. Now we will do the body. Let's create a cube for the body. Press Shift A key, and add a cube. Ups. The cube was created in a strange location, where the cursor is located. We can change the position of the cursor by pressing Shift S key, and by selecting Snap Cursor to center. Now the cursor is in the center. If we add a cube into the scene, it will appear where the cursor is. We can move it here, and change it to edit mode. By activating edge length, we can see that the length of the y-axis is 2 units, but we need 8 units, so we will scale it 4 times 2, to get 8 units. SY key, type 4 and press enter. We need 3 units in the Z and X axis, so we will scale all axes except Y-axis, by pressing S-Shift-Y key, and then, type 1.5, and press enter. We move it in the right position. The body has to be a little higher. So, we will move it up on the Z-axis. We are going to apply texture to the body. In edit mode, select edges. This rectangle, with their 3 marks, corresponds to this face. This little cube is this one. And this long side, is this rectangle here. This other long side is this other rectangle. The square behind corresponds to this one. And the long bottom side has to be this one. We will cut this and this edges. And this edge too, because the upper side is not connected to the bottom side. This edge would be this one. And we cut all the edges of the bottom side. Ctrl E, mark seam, select all, U key and unwrap. We scale it and grab it. Good. Now we will move the bottom texture to the right position. We have to rotate it 90 degrees. Alt-Z for texture view. Let's move these edges. Good. Check for any transparent edge. This side is not too good. And this one also needs some adjustment. We move it to the right. Cool! The body has been easy. Let's do now the 3 main vertebrae. They are bigger than the other ones. These are the textures for the little vertebrae, and here it is the texture for the big vertebrae. As always, let's add a cube with Shift A key. In the Z-axis, we want a length of 1.5, so, we will scale it 0.75. In the X-axis, we need a length of 0.5, so we scale it 0.25. In the Y-axis, we need a length of 1.5, so we scale it 0.75. Ups. We needed a height of 0.75, not 1.5. So, we have to scale it 0.5. Let's try to apply the texture a little bit faster, because it's the same of what we have done all the time.